spiritual teacher, and I'm a spiritual teacher who eats bacon. And this is one of the things that I teach to my students is that to be spiritual, to be on your path, to be all you can be, you don't have to be a vegetarian, you don't have to be vegan, you don't have to dress in white, you don't have to dress like a hippie every day. I have too many students who come to me with all of those blocks, and they say, I have a huge spiritual block, I can't go on my path. But all of that, honestly, it's ego blocks, because your ego is telling you that you can't be spiritual until you've made this change and that change and that change in your life. You can't be uber spiritual until you're vegan, and I call bullshit on that, all right? And I have one of my great friends here, Lorraine, and she has been one of my students too. I've seen her grow and expand just so much over the past few years, and she is nutritionist. What is it, that title you have?
Oh, a registered holistic nutritionist.
Thank you. And we're going to talk today, just a really nice conversation on the brain and body alignment and how our food and our spirituality comes together to support us in our well-being. This is fun.
It is fun.
Yeah. Looking forward to sharing all of your wisdom.
Me too. Thank you.
Well, at least part of the wisdom. This is only an hour.
That's true. That's very true.
So tell us a little bit more about you before we get started, about your journey.
Okay. So I always feel like I need to start off saying that my journey started as an elementary school teacher teaching grades 7 and 8. And I started experiencing a lot of health issues. And then I decided to go back to school and do further training to become a registered holistic nutritionist. At first, it was more to work on myself and my own healing. But then I just became very interested in working with others and helping others as well, because I wasn't responding to conventional treatment. I was just going further and further down a path in terms of being unhealthy and so forth. So as I continued learning and studying and working with others and working on myself, I really started to become fascinated with the link between physical health and brain health, because I find that something that we often tend to separate in the West and we don't talk about enough, that our mental health impacts our physical health, and our physical health, our body, impacts our mental health. And I even struggle with saying those separately, because we always talk about the body and the head as if they're separate, right? Like there's like this cutoff, and the head is part of the body. So if the body is sick, then probably the mind is sick, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then whenever I started working in the classroom more and more, I started noticing that same issue with certain students and so forth. Not that I ever worked with them as clients, but noticing that connection with their physical health and their ability to learn, or behavior issues or mental health issues. So that's where I'm at.
Cool. And now you have your own business as well that you started.
Yeah, so I've started off working as a nutritionist, doing consults and so forth. And then my business evolved into what I call mind-body eating, which focuses on not just telling people what to eat, but examining their relationship to food. Because for me, food is a teacher. Like, it's my greatest teacher. Food is a relationship that we engage in every day, several times a day, sometimes 3, sometimes 6, sometimes 12. And so how we eat, when we eat, what causes us to eat, where we eat, all those factors really can tell us a lot about how we're going about and navigating in our life. Yeah. So it's still been a huge journey for me, and I'm still learning even for myself. And I'm just learning so much in terms of my relationship to food and how I'm eating and so forth. Like I think it's just an ongoing process. So now I'm also I'm doing additional training in neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm also working to kind of further my education so that I can further work with people to really work on that brain health as well, in order to increase overall health and vitality.
Good. I like that. And I think that's a really good tweetable too. Food as a teacher.
Yeah.
So let's treat
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true. You offered a program last fall, I think,
Yeah.
about it's not about dieting. It was ditch the diet.
Hmm.
That is one. The mindset part of how we eat is often lacking. And if we use that tweetable, that food is a teacher, I notice for myself and the different diets that I've done over the years, it's very restrictive.
Yes.
And it's not based on self-love. It's usually based on self-hatred because I
Yeah.
hate my body. I don't want my body to look this way. Very rare are those of us who undertake a food journey because we love ourselves.
Right.
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 So,
And that's where the failure is, right? The minute you start embarking in a relationship with food or eating that's abusive,
mhm.
your body is full of wisdom and it's only going to put up with that for so long. And then it's just going to say enough of this. So even though I just did a talk last night at the library on this, and I said, even though it seems like our body is failing us and we can't trust it, and we have to follow this plan and we can't listen to our own wisdom, it is in fact our wisest, for me, it's our wisest inner guidance system
It is.
to let us know if we're on or off course.
Yep. And all of you empaths out there, your body is your biggest antenna.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
very,
so
very
for
true.
sure, what you put in this antenna, because the body is a battery system for the soul that enables us to be incarnated and anchored on earth at this time. So it's our temple. It's a temple for our soul, and we want to treat it right.
Yeah, that's right.
Food, mood, and brain chemistry. Let's talk about that for starters.
Okay. That's actually one of my most, the topics that I'm most passionate about, because having struggled with an anxiety disorder most of my life, and not even knowing that I had an anxiety disorder because I didn't know anything different. And then whenever I had a breakdown and started eating better and doing all kinds of other changes, I just couldn't believe how much better I felt. And it's just incredible whenever you experience that. So I would say the first place to start with food, mood, and brain chemistry is ditching the processed food, the food full of dyes, preservatives, all that type of stuff. Just eating, what they say, clean.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about protein. For me, I had been a vegetarian, then actually a vegan at one point, for quite a long time. And I was really struggling, and I was really surprised when I went to the first time I had ever been to a naturopath. She said to me, you need to start eating meat. And I was like, what? I thought you were going to be like so proud of me that I'm a vegetarian and I don't even eat cheese. I eat like fake cheese. And that was quite a rude awakening. But I decided to take her advice because I was desperate for a change.
Mm-hmm.
And for myself, I couldn't believe the difference in terms of increasing my protein intake, particularly in the morning. I definitely have learned I need protein first thing in the morning, whether it's eggs or sometimes I'll actually have sardines and people think I'm crazy, but whatever works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So definitely protein is a huge factor. Obviously, vegetables, nutrients, all your vitamins and minerals, and we can get into that in more detail if we want. I would also say one of the key things is balancing blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons and tons of research out there. When our blood sugar is off, our mood is off, among other things. So for a while I was eating okay, I was eating better. I was still consuming a lot of sugar, and I was consuming it in the form of honey and maple syrup. And I don't want to demonize honey and maple syrup, but for myself, I'm very sensitive to addiction with those sweets. And first it starts off with like a teaspoon of honey, and then like 2 weeks later, I'm eating like quite a few teaspoons or tablespoons more like it of honey. And that's enough for me to throw off my blood sugar and affect my mood. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. We often talk about the hangover the next day from too much alcohol. Well, that's part of that is because our blood sugar has been thrown off. Mm-hmm. The other factor is as we get older, we might not have a hangover from alcohol. We have a hangover from sugar, right? Mm-hmm. Like I know I have experienced that on more than one occasion. I know, Jad, you and I had actually been out to a dinner one night, and I had my gluten-free brownie, and it was just delicious. And I think we were laughing all the way home. And the next day I felt, yeah, the next day I felt awful. I was cranky. I was anxious. And at first I was like, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense. And then it just kind of like, oh, right. Like, I know exactly what's going on. So I definitely would suggest eliminating sugar, doing it slowly. You don't have to do it all at once, but finding some program that works for you to kind of cut that out of your life and see how that improves your mood.
And you have a program, I think. You do something.
Yeah, I do have a quit sugar, what I call the sugar intervention program, because it is seriously addictive, like 8 times more addictive than cocaine, right? So it's not something that boils down to willpower or is a character flaw. It's a very addictive substance. And the other thing that I had to increase, which at the time was really new information for me, was fat. Mm-hmm. So again, as a vegan at the time, I was definitely not consuming enough fat. I was eating some nuts and some seeds and some olive oil. And I know that even saturated fat has really been demonized for a long time, particularly in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. But we're now learning, like, saturated fat is used for all kinds of functions in our body. We even need cholesterol because our hormones need cholesterol in order that they're made from cholesterol. So there's a lot of factors that come into play mm-hmm. that cause cholesterol to be elevated. And oftentimes it's when we want to get really technical, when saturated fat oxidizes with sugar, that's whenever it becomes problematic. So I would, say, don't be afraid of eating your bacon. Don't be afraid of please put real butter on your toast, ditch the margarine, ditch the Becel, all that stuff, use real food. Eat the eggs. There's no question that eggs, play a role in contributing to a healthy diet and do not elevate our chances of having heart attacks and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I always kind of say, like, there's so much information out there that's so complicated, and there are so many, one study saying this and another study saying that, but I say, if you look at the way our great-grandparents ate, and if you kind of try to mimic that to a certain extent, you're probably going to be somewhat on the right path, maybe perhaps having to do some tweaks and so forth, but what I like to say, kind of going back to our roots. So yeah. The other thing I definitely want to mention is the importance of your essential fatty acids, your omega-3s, your DHA that come from, products like fish, mm-hmm. or taking fish oils if for whatever reason you can't have fish. But those are so important and have been found to play such a crucial role in brain health, in the health of our nervous system. Mm-hmm. There's been all kinds of studies finding that, for example, students who are dyslexic, the degree of their dyslexia is directly correlated with the degree of how deficient they are in omega-3. So it's not to say that that's the only reason why they're dyslexic, but that certainly plays a role. And they're also finding that omega-3s play a big role in mood as well. So.
And I want to point out also what you mentioned earlier about when we went to the entrepreneur dinner with the brownie incident.
Yes.
Really.
The brownie hangover.
Yes. Because oftentimes we think that we do the good thing by taking gluten-free.
Right.
But then instead, because when you remove the gluten, like from the wheat, like if you don't refine sugar, the refined flour, then they just scoop extra sugar in there for the flavor.
That's right.
And it's even worse than eating with gluten sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think I shared an article, I think it was yesterday, on my Facebook page about that exactly. I actually very rarely consume gluten-free desserts. I think the only time I do is when I go to the Women Entrepreneurs Dinner. For that reason. And there was a doctor talking about, there's a lot of reasons why people can't tolerate gluten anymore, but you're fooling yourself if you think that switching to a gluten-free diet means, the corporations have kind of caught on and have created all these gluten-free crackers and cookies and desserts and so forth. And it doesn't mean they're healthier if they're laden with all kinds of other chemicals and additives and sugar and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So going gluten-free does not necessarily mean your mood is going to be better by going gluten-free if it's going to be, if you're substituting it with kind of not such a great product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gluten is just the protein, right? That's in a lot of grains.
Yes.
But the thing is that the way that it was processed 100 years ago made it much more digestible for us.
Mm-hmm.
And the other factor is because our food system is being genetically modified so much that the gluten and the grains that we were consuming 100 years ago are just not the same thing. Our body's like kind of saying, what is this? This is poison, or this is an enemy, or your immune system is kind of sending off alarm bells. So
yes, because it creates an allergic reaction. It creates inflammation, right? So you have
that's right.
Bowels, inflammation.
Yeah, that's right. It creates inflammation in the bowel, and that kind of actually ties into the other topic we were going to get into with the gut health is gluten, casein, which is one of the protein molecules in dairy, are very large. And so for a lot of people, that can really irritate the intestinal lining. And then once those molecules start passing through the intestinal lining and getting into the bloodstream, the immune system picks that up and often will start creating an autoimmune reaction because it's doing its job at seeing these, invaders as what it thinks it is, right? So whenever you have an autoimmune reaction, there's all kinds of inflammation that's taking place in the body. And because our head is connected to our body, that's going to create brain inflammation as well.
Okay.
So gut health is very much intimately linked to overall mental health. And I was just speaking to a friend, actually, I think it was yesterday, the day before, who's struggling with her mental health, and her osteopath suggested she take a probiotic. And she thought, like, come on, what's a probiotic going to do? And she said to me that she was actually really surprised to see such a difference. Now, okay, that's an anecdotal evidence, or situation that I'm bringing up and so forth. And, we could argue that it's placebo, but the research is out there, right? That the bacteria in our gut affects our brain, and it's all through the vagus nerve. It's not some invisible thing. It's a nerve that runs from our gut directly to the back of our brain, and there's more communication going from the gut to the brain than the brain to the gut. So we call it our second brain. I almost want to call it our first brain, if it's the one sending the signals, right? So if you want to have good brain health, you have to definitely take care of your gut.
Right.
And a lot of us are, to some extent have leaky gut or have a compromised gut flora because of our modern lifestyle. So there's definitely ways to counteract that and so forth. But it's definitely something we should consider working on and having kind of like some regular maintenance, whether it's having more bone broth or eating more fermented food.
So the symptoms would be mood imbalances. What else? Pain in the gut?
Right. So, like if you have any kind of autoimmune disorder, first of all, which like I'm just floored at the amount of people, including myself, who have or have had a autoimmune disorder of some sort. If you are just having this constant pain, like muscular pain, joint pain, inflammation, that's a huge signal your gut is off, because inflammation, if your gut is healthy, you're healthy. That's right. The idea. You can look at your tongue. Like if you stick out your tongue and it's all white and kind of nasty looking, that's a huge indicator that your gut is full of kind of bad, what we call bad guys, so bad bacteria.
Right.
I would also say, obviously, the typical symptoms of IBS. So whether it's chronic constipation, or whether it's diarrhea, or if it oscillates between the two, pain after eating, any of those factors, or heartburn, any of those things that tie in with indigestion, that's not a part of life. It's not a part of aging. It's a sign that something is imbalanced in your body.
Okay. That's a good reminder. to take a look at those red flags, because sometimes it's just too easy to say, oh, it's just because I'm aging, or it's just,
Right.
and we just, toss it aside. We don't pay attention to it.
Right.
And the bad bacteria, I suppose, grows when we don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors that come into play in terms of what causes that bacterial overgrowth. And then there's also a lot of treatments you can do. But I do want to preface saying, I see too many people trying to figure it all out on their own. And there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation. And I would really say, if you think that you have something really off, whether it's with your mental health or your physical health, to please go see someone who's qualified to help you with that.
That's a very good point, to go see someone who's in the know, who's studied, and not take tips from Dr. Oz.
Right. Yeah.
I worked, when I first started my Reiki practice, I was as an acupuncturist, and she was selling some herbs. And some people would come in and say, oh, do you have this herb or that herb? Because I saw it on Dr. Oz and now I want the big thing. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's not a 30-second segment that's going to tell you how much to take, if you have to take it, how much to dose yourself. And oftentimes, even doing the muscle testing, the spiritual ways of knowing if something is good for you, sometimes it's not sufficient because you don't have the frame of reference to know if this is optimal or not for you. So always work with someone who's qualified.
Yeah, and I'm so glad. It's so true. It's so important, and I think that's really important to mention too with mental health as well. That I have a little package on different things you can do if you're struggling with your mental health. However, that's not meant to be a substitute for going off medication. Like if that's your goal, if eventually like to see yourself going off medication, fine, but you need to do that with either your doctor or an integrative medicine practitioner or somebody who can help you along the way, because just like you wouldn't kind of fool around if you had cancer, right? You wouldn't try and figure it out yourself. You certainly should not be doing it with your mental health, or even if you think you have an autoimmune disorder. So
yeah, get the more people on your team as possible. That's
right. Yeah.
So the spirituality, the nutrition, that's part of the puzzle that makes you healthy. And Western medicine can be as miraculous.
Yeah, that's right. It all plays a role. And that's kind of and I know a lot of people's pet peeve is that we have Western and holistic, they're all just different aspects. Like if my appendix is in trouble, I would hope I'm going to go to emergency. I'm not going to go see a naturopathic doctor, right?
And don't come see a Reiki practitioner. Just
yeah, just get to the hospital. So they definitely all play a role, and so forth. And like you said, it's important, I think, to just see maybe a variety of people to kind of work on your healing.
Yep. Just like our spirit guide teams, we have
that's right.
We have more, and everybody has their every spirit guide that we have has their gifts for us. Then we need to surround ourselves with real humans as well, who have all of these different tools.
Yeah,
because everybody wants to work to make us feel better.
That's right.
So everything a little bit in moderation is best. Like, I wouldn't do only Western medicine, and I would not do only holistic either.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that's, as we were talking about, a huge myth in the spiritual world, right? Is that you are more spiritual, or there's something superior about being vegan or being vegetarian. And I think some of that is, without trying to sound insulting, but is a little bit new agey. And it comes from, it's misinterpreted from the yogic tradition. So it really started in the 70s, whenever yoga started becoming more popular and so forth. And people started studying Ayurvedic medicine, which is a part of the yogic tradition, which came from India. And it's thousands of years old. Ayurvedic medicine, there's so much wisdom in there. It's comparable to the wisdom that you would find in Chinese medicine. And Ayurvedic medicine recognizes that there's different doshas. So what they call doshas, we call body types.
Mm-hmm.
And that certain body types do better on certain diets. And then there's also like certain body types that are like cusps. So for example, I'm more of what's called a vata. It's a lot of what's called air and space. So I'm more prone to anxiety, but I'm also very creative. But I'm a bit of what's called being on a cusp of a pitta, which is fire. So that means that, and I know this about myself, it can be it can be both a blessing and a shadow, if we will, that I can have too much drive sometimes, like fire and wind together, right? It's just like, and then I just kind of burn out. Yeah. And so I've really been working on that, on how to like simmer that down a little bit with some water or something. But what these different body types really boil down to is that you need to eat for, I don't even want to say your dosha or your body type, because even that sounds like a prescription. But for listening to your inner wisdom, I would encourage anybody watching this to go and check out Ayurvedic medicine, to Google, what is my dosha, DOSHA, and learn about it. Because when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, this seems pretty ridiculous. Like there's always this more sciencey part of me that is always skeptical of that type of stuff. But it makes a lot of sense, because the naturopath that I saw many years ago, who was the one who got me to start eating meat again, said, you're a vata, you're more vata than pitta, and vatas very rarely do well in a vegetarian diet. Like she said, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's very hard. They need protein. And it makes so much sense, like an air sign, and imagine not eating any meat. Like it's just, you need that something to ground you, right? Whereas I don't know, a pitta, or I think a kapha does better. So a kapha is a person who tends to be more curvy. So if you want, I'll just kind of go through the different. Sure. So I'm a vata pitta. So a true vata is very tall and slender, like your supermodels that you see on the runways. And then like a vata pitta is kind of somewhere in the middle. And the pitta a true pitta is like more muscular. They're the ones who they just seem to be born with muscle. Like they just are really solid and grounded and so forth. And then the kaphas tend to be more curvy. They're a water sign, water and earth, I should say. And they're ruled by spring. So kaphas do, I don't want to say always, but often can do okay on a vegetarian or vegan diet. Whereas pittas and vatas tend to need some amount of meat. And so going back to where this kind of misinterpretation of the yogic tradition came from, was that some people did better on a vegetarian or vegan diet. And then all of a sudden, I think it was everyone needs to be on a vegan and vegetarian diet. And that we decided that, animals have consciousness, and so it's wrong to take their life. And like you said, I think it depends. For me, it's how it's done. It's if it's your food is ethical, because when I first say plants have consciousness too, right? Like I just read a study, oh gosh, it was maybe, I don't know, anyway, doesn't matter, but by a world-renowned polygrapher, like the most recognized polygrapher in the world. And I thought, well, this is kind of weird. What does he have to do with any of this?
Polygraphs, are they like the truth thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and I was just kind of really blown away with this. So he actually started testing the consciousness to see if plants have a consciousness using a polygraph machine. So I don't know all the details of how he did it, but he was able to prove that plants reacted to the emotion in the room. And so through these series of tests, he was able to prove that plants have a consciousness, right? And we've all heard of the studies where the kids, like kindergarten kids, take two plants, and one plant they basically verbally abuse, and then the other plant they say all kinds of lovely things to. And the plant that's verbally abused tends to fail to thrive and often ends up dying. Yep. Whereas the plant that's being treated with a lot of love tends to flourish. Yep. So for me, it's honoring all of the food on our plate, whether it's an animal, whether it's a plant, whether it's a herb, it's all part of Mother Earth. And it's all about being grateful for its offering.
Yes.
And it kind of makes me think too of the course I took 2 years ago on women in spirituality. And it was talking about how there's an indigenous group in South America. And this woman had gone to live with them, and she had learned that before this group of men would go on a hunt, they would either have dreams or a vision quest about the animal they were going to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they went on the actual hunt the next day or the next week or whatever the case might be, they would be experiencing the same scenario that they saw in their vision quest. And then there would the animal be almost sometimes just standing there, like it was offering itself, its life to nourish these people. And so I found that really cool, because that really blew me away, because we tend to think of hunting today as really barbaric and cruel, and people who hunt, aren't evolved and so forth. And it really kind of changed, it really changed my perspective of hunting. And again, it's how you do it, right? It's how you approach it. And, we know that the Native Americans always thanked the animal that they killed after a hunt and so forth. And there were ceremonies for that. So I think it's more about what we bring to the experience of hunting or gathering or eating and so forth. It's like anything else.
And that is how you bring spirituality into your everyday. I think we wanted to tie it all together.
Right.
How you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you want to develop yourself spiritually, it's not just about the meditation. It's not just about creating your altar. It's not just about having crystals in your pocket.
That's right.
It's everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's how you give grace and you give thanks for your food, and how you give thanks for your body, and how you have this relationship with your body.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, that's the thing too, like just recognizing what your body needs and honoring it, right? Like, if you're more sensitive, because if you are an empath, don't deny yourself that meat if it's going to be what grounds you.
Yeah.
Because it's meat is very grounding, so it's definitely, and I'm not saying someone should eat meat, like it's just to be open to that concept that one is not necessary, like that an animal's life is not superior to a plant's life, or that one diet is not superior to another, right? There's a million different ways to do something right, so to speak.
And there's what's good for you, and what's good for you is not necessarily what's best for the rest of the world, right?
Exactly.
And to release ourselves from judgment, because even very spiritually evolved people can be very much in their ego and so very judgy, like my way is the best way of doing things, and if you don't do things my way, then you're so not evolved.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just so much of that in the spiritual community. If you don't do things this way, if you're not vegetarian, if you don't dress like a pagan, if you don't do a naked ceremony, then you're just nothing, right? You're not worth it.
Right.
So we need to recognize those judgments within ourselves and release them, at least for ourselves. That's how we experience freedom. And that's how we can really grow into our spirituality. It's when we start judging ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, I think we are going to wrap it up already.
Okay.
In 45 minutes, just about. So is there anything else that you really want to bring forth to our attention before we wrap it up?
I would just say kind of what we've been discussing all along is just honoring the wisdom of your body, like using your body as your inner guidance system, and recognizing food as your teacher, as your mentor. It's eating and food is a relationship, and recognizing how that relationship plays out in your life, and what that can tell you or teach you. To move forward.
Good. Now, do you have an offering or something that you'd like for people to contact you?
Yeah, if I'm offering a free guide booklet on supporting brain health,
Mhm.
both through food and supplements.
Mhm.
And I'm very careful when I say supplements, nothing too wacky as we've been talking about.
Mhm.
So if you want to sign up for my emails, I will pass that along to you at no cost.
And what is the email? How can they contact you? Is it on your website or do they send you an email?
The email is on my website. The email sign up is also on my website.
Okay.
So either or.
I know, Lorraine, I know the things that she produces, so I'm sure this is going to be a really insightful little booklet. Um, so I invite you to take advantage of that, learn a little bit more about the food that you eat and how that can help you move more and develop more into the spiritual self that you want, and removing the excuse of food and how you eat as a block for not going forward with your spiritual development.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't need to be a saint before embarking on the journey,
That's right.
right? You don't need to be a guru on the mountaintop to embark on a journey of self-awakening and self-love. It's about the journey. And right now, as light workers, Reiki practitioners, intuitives, what is important of us, what is being asked of us, is that we are spiritual in our everyday lives, not alone on a mountain, not alone in a monastery,
Yeah.
but in our everyday choices. So, and food is a big part of the everyday choices.
That's right.
No one else puts the food in your mouth but you. So
That's correct. That's right.
it's part of the journey of self-love. So one of the things that I teach my students and my clients is the phrase, because I love myself, I choose to.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
great.
you can do that with the food. Because I love myself, I choose to have this food or this type of food. And maybe one night, it might be because I love myself, I'm going to have a glass of red wine and a bowl of chip. Not a whole super mega bag from Costco,
Yeah.
a bowl of chip, right? Because sometimes we need treats.
Right. Exactly. That's soul food. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But treats are treats, are not everyday things.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you appreciate them more, right? When you don't have them all the time,
Yeah.
you appreciate them. I totally appreciate my desserts way more than whenever I was a kid and my dad, who's a sugar addict,
Yeah.
they were always available. So yeah, it's true.
And I know that you have some really good recipes for treats on your blog too.
Yes, I do. Because that was something that I really had a hard time with, was cutting the treats, because I always grew up with treats.
Yeah.
You know, they say not to make the connection that food is love, but growing up in my house, food was love. Mom made great meals and dad always, took us to the candy store and so forth. And so I realized, well, do I have to eliminate that belief, or do I just have to reframe how I'm going to approach that, right? So I made a point to learn all kinds of different recipes that are nourishing and tasty.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's a great part of it, because everywhere in the world, food is what brings us together.
It is. It's
Even
both.
at church, there's communion, right? There's a piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just thinking today, as I was making my bed, thinking about our meat, that food is interesting because it's both a very primal act, like every creature and so forth, animal, insect, eats in some form, and yet it's very sacred.
It is.
Right? Like it's I don't know, it fascinates me more and more the more I study it and work with it and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So make your food sacred. Bring love. What I tell my Reiki students is, when you stir that soup, you just stir in Reiki love with it. And it helps change also it influences a little bit the nutrients that you get, because you just infuse your food with love.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
because you have that mindset, it changes a little bit how you live your day, because you're focusing yourself in love and your food, how you nourish yourself, how you conduct yourself in the day.
Well, that's why I've read that apparently there's nothing like mom's home cooking, because mom puts her love into it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Way better than Michelinas in the microwave.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So on that, thank you so much for having this
Thank you.
conversation.
It was great.
And that's it, I suppose.
Okay.
All right. So any last words of wisdom? I think I'm complete, and I'll need to go and ground myself a little bit more. This was really good and great energy with the wisdom.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's all I have to say. I think we've covered it.
Awesome. Till next time.
Okay.
So everyone, again, you can go to lorrainedriscoll.com to go to the blog, sign up for the takeaway. And if you want to visit my website a little bit more, that's deliberatesoulcreation.com, where the takeaway of my website is that you choose how you live your life. You choose the experience that you have. So you have to be very deliberate in the choices that you make every day. That's why it's deliberate soul creation. And the choices that you make do include your food. So be well, eat well, and feel well. All right, bye now.